The Navy SEAL was trained to ignore fear, pain, and hesitation, but that training didn't prepare him for what happened next. In the middle of a frozen forest, where even sound seemed to die, two tiny puppies emerged from the snow. Their bodies were shaking uncontrollably. Their cries were weak, and yet they didn't run from him. They walked straight toward him and begged. One collapsed at his feet. The other turned back toward the trees, whining urgently, as if pleading, "Please follow us." This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't hunger. This was desperation. Something was waiting in the snow, something they couldn't survive alone. And when the SEAL finally followed them, what he discovered would stay with him forever, long after the cold faded, and long after the mission ended. What he found moments later wasn't just heartbreaking. It would change him forever. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. He was on a routine winter patrol, far from cities, far from noise, where only discipline kept you alive. The cold bit through layers, numbing fingers, slowing breath, demanding focus with every step forward. This terrain was familiar to him, harsh, unforgiving, merciless to weakness. Years as a Navy SEAL had trained him to ignore discomfort, trust procedure, and move on. Yet even here, in endless white silence, instinct mattered more than orders. More than routine. During this frozen midnight watch, a sudden flicker of movement cut through the white stillness ahead, barely visible through the swirling snow. The SEAL stopped instantly, muscles tightening, instinct snapping to attention as his hand moved toward his weapon. Wind howled softly between the trees, masking sound, distorting distance, playing tricks on the eyes. He narrowed his gaze, scanning for threats, for anything out of place in the frozen landscape. Then the movement came again, smaller this time, unsteady, nothing like an enemy. His breath caught as two tiny shapes pushed through the snow. One of the tiny puppies stepped forward, its legs shaking so badly it nearly collapsed into the snow. Frost clung to its fur, and its breath came out in weak, uneven puffs. The SEAL slowly knelt, lowering himself to its level, stunned by what he was seeing. The puppy didn't run. It didn't bark. It simply looked up at him, eyes glossy with fear and hope, then lifted a small paw as if reaching for him. His chest tightened. Something about this felt wrong, deeply wrong. A second puppy emerged from behind the first, smaller, trembling even harder as the wind cut through its thin fur. It pressed close to its sibling, mirroring every movement, every fearful glance. Together they stood there, tiny bodies swaying, refusing to flee despite the towering stranger before them. The SEAL noticed how their eyes kept darting back toward the dark woods behind them, then returning to him urgently. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't chance. Whatever they had come from was far worse than the cold. The puppies didn't bark or play the way young dogs should. Instead, they let out soft, broken whines, tugging gently at the SEAL's glove with their teeth. One stepped back, pausing, then looked over its shoulder toward the trees, waiting. The other repeated the motion, pulling again, then turning away. It was clear now they weren't seeking warmth or food. They were leading him somewhere. The realization sent a chill through him, far colder than the snow. Training screamed at him to stay en route, to ignore distractions, to trust procedures designed to keep him alive. But instinct whispered louder. The puppies had already started moving, tiny bodies pushing through snow deeper than their legs. He hesitated only a second before following, each step sinking heavier into the cold. The wind sharpened, visibility dropped, and danger pressed in from every direction. Yet he kept going. Whatever waited ahead, he knew turning back now would haunt him forever. The trail grew harder to follow with every step, the wind sweeping snow over the puppy's fragile paw prints. Several times they stopped, turning back to check if he was still there, their whines rising when he lagged behind. The cold gnawed through his boots, numbing his toes, slowing his pace. Trees closed in, shadows stretching long and dark. Still, the puppies pressed forward, driven by something stronger than fear. Refusing to let him fall behind them, the puppies suddenly stopped, their small bodies stiffening as if an invisible line had been crossed. They began circling a low mound ahead, whining softly, noses pressed into the snow. The seal stepped closer, his breath fogging thick in the frozen air. Something about the shape felt wrong, too smooth, too deliberate to be natural. One puppy pawed frantically at the surface, then looked up at him, eyes shining with urgency. That was when his stomach dropped, and he understood the fear driving them. He dropped to his knees and began clearing the snow with his bare hands, ignoring the sting as ice cut into his skin. The puppies pressed close, whining louder with every scrape. Beneath the frozen layer, fur appeared dark, stiff, barely moving. His heart slammed as he uncovered the mother dog, her body curled tightly, ribs shallowly rising. She was alive, but only just. Her eyes flickered open briefly, filled with pain and relief. The puppies rushed to her side, and the seal realized they hadn't begged for help, they had fought for her life. There was no time to think. He tore off his outer jacket and wrapped it carefully around the mother dog, shielding her fragile body from the biting wind. His hands shook as he radioed for emergency extraction, voice tight but controlled. The puppies burrowed against her, trembling, finally allowing themselves to rest. Snow continued to fall, thick and relentless, but he positioned his body as a barrier, blocking the wind. Every second felt heavy. If help didn't arrive soon, courage alone wouldn't be enough to save them. As he examined her more closely, the truth settled heavily in his chest. Her paws were raw and frostbitten, her body dangerously thin, exhaustion carved into every breath. The tracks around them told the story. She had stayed here, unmoving, using what little strength she had left to shield her puppies from the storm. She hadn't tried to save herself. She had chosen them. The puppies pressed against her side, unaware of the sacrifice that had kept them alive, just long enough to find help. The sound of approaching rotors finally cut through the storm, growing louder until it vibrated in his chest. Relief washed over him as rescue medics rushed in, moving fast but carefully. They lifted the mother onto a thermal stretcher, wrapping her in warm blankets, while the puppies were gently gathered and secured. For the first time, the little ones stopped trembling, their cries fading into quiet whimpers. As the team carried them away, the seal stood back, watching life return where death had nearly claimed everything. As the storm began to ease, the seal remained where he was, watching the puppies curl closer to their mother on the stretcher. Snow settled quietly around him, the battlefield replaced by something far more fragile. He had faced enemies without fear, but this moment struck deeper than any mission. Strength, he realized, wasn't always measured in power or weapons. Sometimes it lived in a freezing mother who refused to move, and in two tiny lives brave enough to beg a stranger for help. Weeks later, the seal stood quietly at a small shelter, watching two healthy puppies tumble clumsily across the floor, their tails wagging without fear. Their mother lay nearby, alive, scarred, but healing, her eyes calm for the first time. The storm had taken much from her, but not everything. As he turned to leave, one puppy ran back and pressed against his boot just once, as if remembering. He knelt, smiling softly. In the snow, they had begged for help. In return, they had shown him what true courage looked like, and he would carry that lesson forever.